President Biden has just said publicly he's going to veto a bill that will protect women's sports from men participating in women's sports. We have the details. That's the perfect segue for our last story about trans rights. So this gal, this is Riley Gaines, most famous female swimmer right now in America. All American.
An actual woman. Beautiful.
Oh, woman. Yeah. Born genetically and is proud of it.
Biologically beautiful woman, yes.
God bless her. From the University of Kentucky, all American. She's traveling around the country speaking out against President Biden because President Biden has promised to veto a bill, that would prevent biological males from participating in women's sports. In other words, the Congress is moving through this bill right now, H.R. 734, that would make it a requirement if you want to compete with women that you have to be a woman. Okay, I know. Completely inappropriate. And as Riley says, Biden's veto promise is evidence that he's putting a, quote, radical minority ahead of all women in the country. Because she says the president has declared that science, truth, and common sense doesn't matter. In opposing this bill, President Biden is catering to a radical minority at the expense of women who are 51% of the American population. She said, we want equal opportunity, privacy, and safety in our sports, and it shouldn't be controversial. And then she went on, this is interesting. The women who once advocated for Title IX should be outraged, as this goes against everything they fought for. Female athletes of all ages, levels, and sports deserve better. In other words, women should compete against women, and men should compete against men. Well, if Biden vetoes this bill, men will be competing against women in all of women's sports. And effectively, there will be no more women's sports. Do you agree?
I agree with you're saying, but I don't agree with they're doing. Right?
Well, duh.
Yeah. So this is another tactic to tear down our society. I mean, it's right there. I don't know if you've ever read this book called Behold a Pale White Horse by Lieutenant Colonel William
Bill Cooper.
Yes, Bill Cooper. Bill Cooper. Yeah, right. He wrote in his book, this was years ago. This was over 20 years ago. I read this book. And it's just certain things stuck out to me. One of the things that they wanted to do to destroy the society was to have men be with men and women be with women. He also went on to talk about how some of these shootings at schools would take place before they started taking place, Barry. He described it in the book. It's crazy. But one of the things is that they will have society look at women, the population, and one of the ways that they can bring the population down is to convince men to have relationships with other men, women to have relationships with other women. This would prevent the population from growing, but it hasn't been doing enough. So now we have this movement for the men, like for the guy, what's his name? Richard Levine, or whatever in the White House, he actually is married with kids. I'm like, what? And what? So one day, I was like, one day he woke up and said, honey, you call me honey dear too. Well, I'm like,
now it's Rachel.
Yeah, it's Rachel, right? Yeah. So now it's like, so does he go home to her still? I'm really confused. So how does that work? And and the kids. But anyways, them allowing a biological male to perform against another woman is completely disgrace, and it's a spit in the face of women throughout the entire country. It really is. They constantly say that they're championing women, Barry, but they're not championing women. They're doing just the opposite. They're elevating a man, pretending pretending to be a woman, and then they just kick the actual woman to the curb. And the feminists here in the United States of America are silent. The kitty cat hair wearing hat women are silent. Didn't they all hate men? But now a man comes in and taking their trophies, their jobs, their positions, and they're silent. What is really wrong here?
I don't understand where equality for women fits into the women's rights movement if women don't stand up for women. I mean, in my daughter used to compete in sports, and the idea of having her in a jiu-jitsu competition against a man, I would never have allowed it. She would have been hurt terribly. Men are stronger. Everybody knows it. Any idiot that says they're the same biologically is an idiot. And it's fairly obvious that it's based on no science. It's based on sociology bullshit, if I can say that, And so now this Riley Gaines woman goes coast to coast, and she was brutally attacked at one of the colleges where she was speaking. She had to be rescued after 2.5 hours. She could have been very, very badly hurt because the trans activists, and let me say who those people are. They are men that look like you and me that dress up as women, right? And are offended that a woman has the gall to say, I don't want to compete against you. You're bigger and you're stronger and you have better bone density and you have longer muscles and you can lift more and you're able to dominate me. And I don't want that. I want women's sports.
Yes.
And that was a crime. And that was a crime according to these people.
Yeah. And they're trans Tifa.